This episode of the Accounting Insiders podcast is brought to you in part by Xero. Xero is a powerful cloud accounting software that improves efficiencies across your practice. With all client data stored on a single unified ledger, you and your clients can easily access and collaborate on the same set of books. Xero's advisor tools and automation solutions reduce time-consuming manual tasks and put data entry on autopilot. Work faster and more efficiently than ever before with Xero. Visit xero.com/accounting insiders to learn more. All right. So hello and welcome to another episode of the Accounting Insiders podcast. My name is Gary DeHart. I am the host of the Accounting Insiders podcast and the publisher of Insightful Accountant and Tax Practice News. Today, my guest, as you can see over his left shoulder, is Will Hill of Will Hill Consults. Will, welcome. Thanks for taking a few minutes today.
Thank you, Gary. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. And I know you were just out in Vegas at the Digital CPA. Before we dive into our topic, why don't you give me just give our our listener just a high level on what the Digital CPA is all about and what you did there.
Yeah, so there are probably a little over 1,000 people there, Gary, and just we focused on the digital transformation and things around both client accounting advisory services as well as audit from a digital perspective. And it was a great collaborative feel that was out there, a lot of sharing going on. So it was good to be part of that.
Is that do you have to be a member of AICPA to go to that?
No, you do not. That's actually put on by CPA.com, and you do not have to be a member to go to that at all. So I think the next one next year's in Denver. So,
is it? Okay.
Yeah.
And it's typically in December, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Did they announce the date?
They did. It is right around that same time, kind of.
Okay. First week-ish
of December in Denver.
Okay. All right. Well, great. Well, if anybody has interest in that, you can always take a look at CPA.com. I'm sure they have that information out there posted. If it's not posted yet, I'm sure it will be in the next week or so. Yeah. But you said content was really good.
Yeah, it was very good.
And low pressure on the exhibit side. You weren't getting dragged into booths and nobody's making you buy anything.
Yeah, no, it was there really wasn't any direct sales pressure. They kind of keep the number of vendors a little bit limited to make sure that it's really collaborative and that the tools that are there are focused on the digital transformation and not just tools for the sake of tools. So I thought it was good.
Yeah, and did you teach a class?
I did not teach a class. I did one of the roundtables they had around staffing and so forth, but I did not teach any classes.
Okay. Well, why don't you before we dive too far in? So you did a roundtable on staffing. What was the general feedback from people in the roundtable? What were you hearing on staffing?
Well, the specific roundtable. Maybe this isn't fair, Gary, because I didn't tell you specifically is around staffing scheduling for audit teams.
Okay.
And some of the challenges that presents. But by and large, right, staffing continues to be a challenge. And really looking at it, talking about how do you grow people from outside the profession. And a lot of conversations around roles and responsibilities. And making sure that we're using the team that we have well. I think for me, that's a big thing as firms work is just, we know we need more staff, but how do we use who we have really well?
Right.
And then how do we put a premium and a priority on our culture and the right fit, not just on, hey, I found someone, they need work, they're in.
Right? I have a warm body that wants a paycheck. So just throw them into the fire. Yeah, we even we're very small, and so there's two of us who are full time, and we have a couple. Obviously, several people who write for us, and we have two basically full time equivalents in the Philippines, and there's plenty of work to do, but the workflow of keeping that work in front of them, ensuring that it gets done, and then ensuring that after it's done, kind of the follow-up there is in place. That's probably my biggest struggle around that. We have well-qualified people, they're great at what they do, but taking the time myself to plan out, hey, what is it that I need them to do, and
Yeah.
then making sure it's done and done properly. Again, fortunately, they do a really good job, but we all need to have somebody, check and balance.
Right. You know, it's interesting that one of the speakers for a little while was Carla McCall, who's the incoming chairwoman of the AICPA.
Okay.
And she just mentioned how at their firm, they recognize that they leverage their partners really well with operational and administrative personnel, but they don't do that with the middle management. And so they've started leveraging the middle management with operational and administrative personnel as well, and saying, hey, use these people to make the most of what you are. And I thought that was great, and I agree that many firms don't. It's not at that level. It's not a 1-to-1. It might be a 1-to-2 or 3.
Right.
But a great idea again of back to my concept of roles and responsibilities. Who's doing what really makes sense.
Yeah. And free people up to do what they're best at. And that's going to give the firm and that, when you're on that side, or in our case, give our business the best ability to be its best, right? And
Hmm.
make money, which is what our business should be doing. So,
Right. Right.
okay. Well, great. Well, that wasn't even what we were going to talk about. We
It
were
wasn't. Episode
but
two.
good
Episode
off.
two.
Yeah, that was good off the cuff. So, but what we really wanted to talk about was it's December 7th in 2023. So we're leading into, a new wonderful tax season. And right now, and I say wonderful because right now I think it's showing signs of being wonderful because we're not hearing a lot from the government making any major drastic year-end changes that are going to put the profession on its heels, as we've seen over the past several years. So hopefully it will be a wonderful tax season. So how do we, as practitioners, how do practitioners make sure that it is a wonderful tax season? What are some things that people need to be thinking about today as they prep for that
Yeah.
next month?
Yeah. So we used to, when we think about tax season, historically the conversation comes around March and April are crazy months. And while that may not be wrong, I think we need to put a little more attention on the month of January. And in
Okay.
some respects, what are you doing in December? But we'll get to that in a minute. But I think, January as a whole for many firms is truly the busiest month of the year. We've got the intersection of accounting and tax. And if you're a smaller firm, that's the same people have double pressure at that point in time. If you're a larger firm, that's when everybody is at their peak fever pitch of things going on. We got to wrap up books for the year, 1099s, W-2s, and then people are starting to clamor around the tax, and we're thinking about scheduling and that sort of thing. And where I have seen firms start to make headway is I want to pull everything forward. So and we'll talk about extensions and pushing things back in a little bit, but it all starts, I think, with pulling everything forward. And so my question to firms is, what can you do earlier in January? Now we can insert my comment about December, right? How do we not totally slack off in December so that when we go to close the books for the year on our business clients in January, we're not closing 6 months plus the year. We're wrapping up December, and then we're checking some of the year end type activity that's there. So really making sure that we're using January very strongly and doing things early, not just waiting. We know we've got some of the other payroll forms and income forms that we've got to produce as well. So I want to do that as soon as I can in the month. If I can close all the books 10 days in instead of 20 days in, what does that mean for producing 1099s and W-2s that are due at the end of the month, right? If I can have my hand around that, what does it mean in terms of confidence with some of the quarterly payroll forms that we've got to kick out, right? So there's this influx, and we often stretch things out through the month to pace ourselves on the accounting side. But here we are in tax season, I want to front load this because I want to turn over the closed set of books the 10th of January, not the 1st of February, to my tax team and let them start getting to work, right? So the sooner we can pull that, the better. And like I said, oftentimes that means what are we doing in December, and making sure that once we're through with tax projections, that we're really driving towards books. I mentioned tax projections, Gary. As I talked to firms this year, one of the things that came up that was admitted by every firm that brought this up said it's not a new problem, but it seemed to be more front of mind was tracking down estimated payments and wrestling on the tax prep side of, did they make the estimated payment? Did we make it for them? Did they actually make it? Did it come out of the business account, personal account? How do we find it? And in the height of February, March, and April, spending a bunch of time trying to chase down this information about estimated payments. And in many cases, these are the same clients that we met with for tax projections in December and that we look at when we close the books for the year. And so how do we take advantage of the conversations in December, the book closing at the end of the year, to just flag whether they paid the tax projection, tax estimates or not, right? Or how much they've paid in, and almost have that as a work paper for firms. So I've seen a couple firms that have a client tracking sheet where they're actually recording and notating, yep, they paid it, here it is. If the client during tax projection time says, oh yeah, I made my estimated payments, they're verifying during December that it was made, so that the tax preparer can go, yep, this is the amount that was made.
Right.
And when they're closing the books in the year, if they're flagging those and not just leaving them in the GL and whatnot, but actually taking that amount, writing it down on some kind of client sheet, or like I said, a tax work paper, say, hey, here's the total amount of estimated payments that actually did go through. So we're not trying to hunt and peck and see if we can find it. So that's another area of, there may be more illustrations of where we can do this in our world than just estimated payments, but it's the most obvious one I think that comes to mind in terms of, we are finding the information and then we either sit on it or we don't document it, and we cause our tax preparers to really try to cycle through. And then the reviewer's like, ooh, I got to make sure we had the estimated payments. So if we're a little bit earlier on that, impact to prepare as well as an impact to the reviewer, and some of the confidence factor that's through there.
Yeah, and it's a time saver, right? It's a hassle saver. It is a probably stress reliever, right, from within the firm. And then from the client's perspective, it's, and again, in my humble opinion, it's doing the job you're getting paid to do by that client.
Yeah.
Because, I, as a client, I shouldn't have to scramble when, we've worked together throughout the year. And, if you can have me, if I'm the client, in that December conversation, or even better yet, quarterly conversation, and we're staying on top of it, um, that makes my life easier, and it makes the check that I have to write you as my preparer, my accounting firm, a lot easier to write because you've made it easy for me. So it's a good service to the client, I would think. Have you seen that adopted well?
Yeah. Yeah.
With
So a
clients?
couple firms actually started that for tax season 22.
Yeah.
Uh, insert definition of numbers here for tax season, but for the
12
prior
months
tax
ago.
season,
We'll
right?
call it
Yeah,
12 months ago, right?
implemented that and really helped save time. And
Mhm.
part of the light bulb moment was, for a couple of those firms, was looking at the notice frequencies and saying, huh, our largest cause of notices has been inaccuracy on estimated payments, right? And so maybe as you're looking at tax season coming up, look, we don't want to analyze notices because we're annoyed by them. I get it. Okay. But that could be something that you do this month and say, hey, let's look back at the notices we had to respond to for our clients throughout 2023. What was the most common
Mm.
cause? And then is there something we can do in our processes or procedures to mitigate that for this coming year, right? We're never going to get rid of all notices. The IRS loves them too much for us to get rid of them. And we're human. We're going to make mistakes, right? But I think that could be a good source of information for where do we need to shore up some of our processes, and build some more confidence into our work product as well.
Yeah. Anything else in processes that you've seen over the past 12 to 24 months
Mm-hmm.
that people have implemented that you would say are the biggest paybacks?
Yeah.
Beyond, let's see, that's number one. You have any other tips?
Yeah. So as I talk to firms, the most costly thing they do is pick up the file and then have to put it down and then pick it up later and then put it down, right? So I want to pick it up once, put it down once in an ideal world scenario. So how do we do that? Um, and so I'm seeing firms bring more transparency to their operational teams around what documents have been received and what's missing. Um, and now to do that, the operational team or the administrative team has to know what's expected as well. So, do we have a list of expected source documents? Did the document request list, is it known and accessible by your admin and operational professionals? Right. And so what I want to do with that is I want to empower them to go chase those documents without having to have the preparer say, "Hey, I went to do this file and I'm missing 6 different K1s." Okay. Now I'll have an operational admin person go do it. Well, what if the operational admin person knew how to look for what was missing before the preparer picked the file up?
Right.
What if when the client said, "Hey, I submitted everything," and they sent an email, "Did you get it all?" Which is probably not necessary, but we know that it happens anyways.
Right.
Instead of just, "Yep, we got it. Thanks. We'll get to your work." That operational admin person goes, "All right. Well, you send it all," he says in air quotes. "Let me go check this against the list of what we're expecting. Let's find out if this is truly everything we need." Now I can use the opportunity instead of being annoyed by this check-in email. That's the client saying, "Please tell me what else to do."
Right.
And now if you've
Communicate with
empowered
them.
that operational person to say, "Oh, I'll tell you what else you need to do. You're missing all of these other tools and documents that we haven't had yet." Um, then again, I just want the preparers to have to pick up the file once, put it down once, right?
So what are tools, you mentioned tools, what are the tools that you've seen that I guess help that, or the work, I guess they're kind of workflow tools, right? What are the top ones that you come across that you've seen very effective
Hmm.
for your
Yeah.
clients?
So some of them are high tech tools, right? That there's some things you can do within a Safe Send or within a Lisio as tools to help drive the collaboration process and bring transparency to what's been received, what hasn't been, and so on. Um, but Gary, I've even seen some firms start to build out very simple um, Excel files. I know that's really innovative,
Right.
but
If it
in
works.
in a lot of firms' cases where they're using a project management tool that has heavy Office 365 integration, then having a Excel file that kind of rolls forward year to year of here's what's expected. Maybe during tax planning that gets updated as to nope, we don't need this year. I'm going to mark it as NA, or I'm going to add a new one because during our tax projection meeting I learned something new, or I
Right.
learned something new during our quarter 2 meeting about what to expect. So I'm going to update what documents we ought to see during tax time as soon as I learn it. Right? So it's almost more of a living document that way in terms of being an Excel file that's linked into a project management tool. And if I know what's sitting there as part of the initial tax preparation project, then the location is simple. It's a shared Excel document through Office 365, so we can all update that as we go through. It can live all year long if we want. So I'm sure there's some things you can do with that as it relates to some of the other tools as well. But if you wanted to keep it low tech and low barrier, that's something I've seen firms use as well, right? And then I think with that, to really capitalize on it, I want to look at what's the order of clients that we're preparing or trying to prepare. So how can I get in front of the sequencing a little bit, Gary? Some of that might be just some look at, hey, who did we do early last year? All right. And so the admin is kind of looking at everyone we prepared in February, and those are the ones that he or she are driving off trying to get all the source docs for, right? And then kind of going sequentially that way. So just a little bit of, because that can be, February 1st. Hey, we don't have all the things for a lot of clients right now. Who do I go to first? Well, who was it that we typically prepare early? Those are the ones I want to go to first because they're used to that.
Yeah.
So,
Got my easy clients, get them checked off and and get the work done so you can spend your time on those a little more difficult or more involved clients.
Hmm.
Is so on your Excel model there that we were talking about, have you worked with clients who were using Excel or paper documentation who switched over to a more, we'll call it tech advanced solution? And if so, what would you say is the was it a light bulb at the end of it going, why didn't I do this last year or 2 years ago? Or what have you experienced with your clients?
So, that light bulb may or may not have gone off. Sometimes that light bulb of, oh, I should have been doing this a long time ago, brings negative emotion as opposed to just excitement about what we have going forward. So I tend
Right.
to just kind of focus on, hey, this is great. Here we are, and where we're moving to. Um, those firms this last year that I've worked with did not make that transition. It was already they went from, we're not tracking anything in terms of what's received, to the tech advanced solution, right? So I've seen firms go from tracking nothing to either a low tech or tech advanced solution. I haven't seen a whole lot of transition from a low tech to a high tech at this point in time.
Gotcha.
So yeah,
But
yeah.
tracking is key, right? I mean,
Hmm.
otherwise, well, you don't know how much work there really is to do, and then you're not sure that you've done all the work you're supposed to do for your client. So
Right.
the
Yeah.
what about trends? What are you seeing, along your client base or like at the events? I know you've been to a few different events in the past couple of 3 months. I think I've seen you posting some things on LinkedIn from a couple of different places.
Yeah.
What would you say the biggest trend was? And this might be putting you on the spot, but this year leading into next year, what's kind of the biggest kind of recurring topic that you've seen?
From a tax preparation perspective, two things. One is, how do we make sure that we're digitizing data that's coming in, right? So whether it be real time, not, a PDF organizer is not truly digital data unless you invest in a tool like a data snipper or something that can take an image of a PDF and turn it into bits and bytes.
Yeah,
But how do we make sure we get real digital data, and starting with our organizers, keeping those things relevant, and not being so broad. Um, but then also trying to be intentional around extensions, Gary, is another kind of conversation of how, if I know I'm going to extend some clients, I want to go ahead and I want to extend them early, right? I think, let's say that a client typically is going to be extended. They've submitted 80% of their documents, but we're going to extend them anyways. I want to extend them early so that my preparer doesn't pick up that file and then put it down. And that was
right,
a completely unnecessary pick up and put down. And it might also throw off if I've got someone from operational capacity calling on missing documents, I don't want them calling on the clients that we're planning on extending. But if we don't do the extension soon, or at least don't have a list internally, maybe you don't actually file the extension on February 1st, but we know who those clients that are gonna be extended. Like that's something, I've seen some clients offering a little discount if you extend. I don't know that that's really necessary, Gary. I think that that's putting the value emphasis on the dollars, and you're putting yourself in a difficult price conversation later if you go to raise prices,
right.
because you've tried to use dollars as a bargaining chip one direction. So to me, I think it's about, hey, who are the clients, especially post pandemic when they messed with tax deadlines anyways? Clients understand that it's just a day in the calendar.
Right.
And as long as we've paid in taxes, we can extend, it's an extension to file, not an extension to pay, right? We all know that. Um, Although I think a lot of clients don't understand that. Um, but just being comfortable with that and saying, hey, Will, you've paid in all your tax that you need to for the year, or at least safe harbor element or whatever it may be. And so we're going to go ahead and extend your return, and we'll get it filed in the summer. Take your time. If you want to get all your stuff to us now, fine. If you want to get it to us in May, fine. You know, um, but we've identified you in that way. I've had other firms that take and use it as a leverage for getting into a subscription style or fixed price style agreement, right, with their business owner clients, and say, hey, right now we're doing your taxes and maybe we're doing your books randomly through the year. If you want to make sure your taxes are done before 3/15 and not be extended, and we're prioritizing our tax time for those clients where we're doing monthly books and the tax work, and they're part of our subscription billing. So if you want to be in that, this is part of what secures your spot to that, right? So kind of using some of those client relationship factors to decide who's going to get the effort and peak time, and then where is it going to go for the summer. So different strategies that firms can use, but not just being random with it, being intentional and putting a plan out there ahead of time, I think gives a lot of confidence to act and just focus on doing the work when it's busy.
Yeah, and actually I like what you said about the, it's, I can't remember exactly how you worded it. It's an extension to file, not an extension to pay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that kind of comes into or touches on kind of the educational aspect that, that a CPA and tax preparer should be sitting in and acting as with their clients, right? You should always
Mm-hmm.
be educating your client. And even just that simple little, hey, it's an extension to file, it's not an extension to pay. But if we've done our quarterlies and we are up to date, or we have a good idea of where the client is as a preparer, well, then we're in a better position to be able to give advice as far as what
Yeah.
they should do. Hey, you know what? Extend, it's not going to matter to you one way or the other. Great. Or no, we need to file and get you caught up. But again, it's part of that advisory, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
that a firm should be providing for their clients. Um,
Gary, I think the
yeah,
challenge with that becomes that for us, the 50th client we tell that to, we've said it 49 other times and we're bored. But for
yeah,
the 50th client, it's their first time hearing it. And
right.
we tend to look at the amount of repetition we do things with internally and forget that it's not near that amount of repetition for our client. And so the education piece, yeah, you've said it 1,000 times, but they haven't heard it 1,000 times. Right. So we have to remember that it's new for the client in front of us.
Yeah, that's actually
Each
a really,
time.
really good point. And around, my background is all on media, so it's always been around advertising, and now you got 1,000 different ways to advertise to people. But companies tend to get tired of their message because they've seen it, like you just said. Well, I've seen my message 1,000 times. Yeah, but your
Hmm.
prospects haven't. Prospects have
Yeah.
not seen that message 1,000 times, and in this case, your client hasn't heard that message, 1,000 times. They've heard
Right.
it maybe 4 times a year at best, if you've had your quarterlies and you've said it, which you probably
Right.
haven't. So what about, I don't want us to go too long. So have you seen anything in working with your clients that I would say is just a total failure, as something that you had multiple clients test and they were like, this just doesn't work for us?
Um,
That's really putting you on the spot because we did not
yeah.
talk about that prior
Yeah.
to going live.
None of my ideas for my clients ever fail, Gary. I don't know. He says
Well,
with
it doesn't
great
have to be I
sarcasm.
didn't say your ideas. I just said things that they've implemented. Uh,
You
like,
know, I think some of the things we find challenging are just forcing on the schedule for when I want to complete returns. So there have been some firms that have been successful in saying, hey, this is when you're going to drop off by. Your drop off date is February 15th. I got another batch of clients where drop off date is February 28th,
mm,
and so on. I've seen some firms try that, and mixed success, right?
okay,
I like the sentiment of pushing on dates and saying, hey, for us to complete this when you need things by. Um, it- One thing that I have seen wreak havoc over and over, and it's not a strategy, it's a failure, is not standing by what you say, right?
mm,
So when you say, hey, we need your source documents, Mr. 1040 and Mrs. 1040, by March 20th in order to file timely, and then someone says, well, I'll get it to you March 22nd, you say, well, that's fine, we'll extend for you.
right,
And if you back off and make a bunch of exceptions, you're not showing leadership in the relationship, and you're going to continue to get walked over and be frustrated, and you're your own worst enemy, right? And sometimes that's tough because we want to serve and help. That's why we do what we do. But sometimes they need that tough love of this is the date, because you've also got to serve and help your team and show that you value them. I had a client actually say, "Yeah, I can't care about this more than my client cares about it when it comes to filing timely." That was great. You can't carry that burden of,
Right.
"Ooh, oh no, it might not be filed on time, or we're gonna have to extend." If the client doesn't care and isn't turning their stuff in, you shouldn't care for them, right?
Right.
You should care about them because that's human. But I can't take that added burden on. I have too much burden on my own, right? Best I
Exactly.
can do is
Right.
communicate, set expectations, and set opportunity to deliver. But I can't let it get in my head.
Yeah, and give you the reminders. Hey, don't forget, you got to get to me this date, otherwise X.
Hmm.
And I think, yeah, otherwise you really do get yourself into a really bad cycle that
Hmm.
can be really hard to get out of. And then you're the one scrambling, and the client's out playing golf on, April
Right.
15th, right? So the
Gary lives in the South, for those that didn't know and are thinking about
exactly.
golf in April.
Exactly. That's right. Well, I haven't played golf in so long that I can't even think about it. My son actually even took my golf clubs to college with him. So I don't even have clubs right now. They are coming back today. So
All right.
I might get to see them today. Um, so let's wrap it up with anything else that you had on your list that we didn't talk about before we wrap it up.
No, I think we're good.
Okay. Yeah, I think we hit most of it, and it's really getting kind of spending the time now to plan for a successful tax season. I think we threw out some good tips, and on the tail of that, we're launching a new webinar series. It's going to be you and Julie Smith. What firm? I can't remember. I always forget the name of that firm.
Yeah, she's the operations director at Harper and Company. Harper
There
and
we go.
Company.
And so you guys are going to be kicking off this webinar series, just 30 minutes monthly, third Wednesday of the month at 11:30 Eastern. And y'all are going to rotate, right? Kind of you January, her February. I don't know what y'all
Oh,
settled.
we're actually going to both be on there. We're going to both be on all of them, and we're gonna have
Oh, all right. Okay.
some fun dialogue.
Oh, great.
And
Okay.
we'll balance who gets to talk more. Maybe we'll flip a coin. Who knows? You know.
And because you have similar but a little different strengths is what I'm going to say. But I mean things
Hmm.
that you work on or in on a regular basis, right?
Yeah, I'm excited about the paired perspective that we're able to bring, and I go out and work with a bunch of firms all over the country, and they've been growing their firm and doing some leading edge stuff in terms of managing the practice. And she does some coaching for other operational directors at different firms as well. So I think just bringing in from a practice management perspective, hey, here's some things that are being considered, being done. Um, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, yeah. And again, that'll be the third Wednesday of the month, kicking off in January, whatever. I don't have a January calendar in front of me, so I don't know exactly what that date is, but we'll start promoting that on Insightful Accountant probably in the next week or so, if not sooner. Um, and we certainly look forward to that and appreciate you guys spending time to do that. Do you have any of your own events that you're hosting that you have scheduled for 2024 yet? If so, I'm gonna go ahead and give a shout out to that, or if you've got a website where you can point people to.
Yeah, so I don't have any of my own events. If you're in the Houston area, I'll be at the Houston, Texas CPA Society's tax event in January. If you're part of uh, Elliott Global or MSI and you're in their North America meetings, I'll be at those events in January, February, respectively, and speaking at AGN event for sure I think it's in June. That's a little bit out there yet, so definitely be out there. And I just, I love working with clients. It's so much fun, and just kind of saying, hey, where are you stuck? Let's move forward. Um, and just being able to bring some inertia to firms. That's always a great time. Find me on LinkedIn. I stay very active out there. My website's willhillconsults.com. I don't love it. It's not the greatest website ever, but it works. But I do have some fun on LinkedIn. A little more activity out there. Love to connect with you.
Sounds great. All right. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Hope you have some great things planned for Christmas. We've got a little time off is what I'm looking forward to over Christmas. But,
Awesome.
as we kick in, get ready for close up this year and prep for next year. So, well, again, thank you so much. Good catching up. And I'm sure that we will talk to you real soon.
Okay. Thanks, Gary.
All right. Thanks, Will. This episode of the Accounting Insiders podcast is brought to you by Out of the Box Technology. Out of the Box Technology is your partner in accounting data services. With over 7,500 industry migrations performed and an expansive network of third-party integrations, a partnership with Out of the Box will augment your advisory practice and turbocharge client accounting operations. Visit outoftheboxtechnology.com/insightful-accountant to get started.